Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, ni hao, buenos dias, what up, This is Cafe Melange, week numero 15, yo pongo, and we're back at it. The headgear might be somewhat distracting. We deal with it. And today, what I'm sharing is an update of work that I'm doing, that I'm on. And that's pretty much what this joint is. Amidst the consideration of the catfish that got away. Anyways, so there's a number of things going on. I'll just start with what's most on mine at the moment. So yesterday, like less than 24 hours ago, 24 hours ago, I saw an update or a blog post put out by Association for Mixed Race Irish, talking about a recent visit to the United Nations in Geneva, regarding work concerning the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. And so the group actually is specifically advocating for mixed race brethren in Ireland, talking about the afflictions, the atrocities, essentially, that are committed. And to be honest, my knowledge of that is comparatively modest, but I read some of it in looking at the blog post. But anyways, they're doing stuff, and they're doing things at the United Nations. And so, based upon that, like I said, I saw it late last night as I was just getting out of the YouTube vortex. And so I said, yeah, I'll give them a call. So I called, I looked for a contact number for the group. There's a Facebook page, there's a blog post, but there's an email address. But other than that, there's an absence of phone thing. There was another website that had a listing of Irish-based groups in the UK that had a phone thing, called it. It was a different number. So the blog post article talks about a professor being in partnership with the group and its approach, a professor of law and human rights at a university in the UK. And he joins in the advocacy work. And so the article lists his name and includes his university. So I called him earlier today, left a voicemail, and got an email back, actually just probably less than an hour later, or about. And so then he gave me further information, email address to a contact in the organization, another contact other than, actually it's the one who hosts the blog post, but other than the founder and the CEO of the group, AMRI. And so I forwarded email accordingly. So anyways, basically the point is coordinating, building, talking, chopping it up. And so identifying opportunities for cooperation and collaboration. Much of what I share in terms of Melange Ethos Institute is the intentionality at this point is simply establishing an institutional foundation, and globally institutional foundation, and it's focusing on the United Nations for obvious reasons, and even before even getting to like policy issues and like even redressing wrongs, which is very appropriate and necessary, and in many cases urgent to do. But rather than doing that, at least in terms of Melange Ethos Society, whilst advocating that for those groups that are doing that, but what we're focusing on is just establishing a foundational groundwork for building institutions that are increasingly strengthened and genuine in responding to this. So, for example, just finding out where we are, doing a census and having the information where we are globally, within each nation, the cities that we are, the demographics, and the experiences that we're having in each of these places. And then with that, amidst that, from that, establishing a registry of individuals, families, and organizations that readily identify as mixed and are willing to be public about that, because that's a huge step. And there are individuals, families, and groups that are already doing that, but the consideration is also, particularly globally, doing it in an increasingly coordinated, intentional way. But again, it's just a registry. That's it. It's not even policy making decisions or whatever. It's just a simple registry, like a census, like any other community does, having an idea of self-assessment of what it is like, and building accordingly. So that's just like common sense. And I'm not. That's not. It's just that's what it is. So, anyways, that's what we're focusing on, and the United Nations should be extremely supportive of doing that, because it behooves the United Nations. That's what the United Nations is there for. It's the success story of the United Nations when it wakes up. So, those are two things that we're focusing on at this moment, and there are additional issues. There are additional initiatives and projects, economic cooperation, and additionally political, diplomatic issues of citizenship, and additionally those are all relevant. But the consideration is that when we strengthen our institutional foundation globally, and we coordinate our efforts globally across all the different boundaries, national, ethnic, religious, and additional, when we establish a proficient foundation institutionally, then we can better respond to each of these issues that affect our respective communities accordingly. And we have strengthened mechanisms for negotiation, leverage, motivation, inspiration when dealing with other institutions, whether it's the United Nations, whether it's national governments, whether it's local governments, whether it's corporations, universities, and otherwise. And so that's the consideration, is strengthening our institutional infrastructure, and thus strengthening our institutional leveraging, or leverage. And this is a calculated competitive context, but our terminology, but our negotiating balance, negotiating strength. So anyways, that's a consideration. So that's why we reach out that. Now, that being said, the turnaround on this is, like I said, we've had a lot of back and forth just in the past day, out of the blue. So that's positive. The interest also in this communication is emphasizing verbal. You want some help? You cool? All right. Right. You want some help carrying it? You all right? Okay. All right. Oh, okay. I'm here. All right. So it's foundational institutional negotiation, back and forth in the past day. Oh yeah, the emphasis also is on verbal. Emails are beneficial, particularly when sharing documents and sharing information, sharing links and stuff like that. But there's little substitute for in-person conversation, and some of the next best things like video calls and online or phone calls. So again, confirmation, just like, oh, am I talking to a person, the right person, and additionally. So anyways, that's part of this notion. Now, that being said, the stuff with Cafe Melange progresses. I'm actually lining up some calls. I've been talking about this for a few months now. We're in week 15 of this, and this is supposed to be like a cooperative joint, a collaborative, participatory joint. And so we're into like 4 weeks at this point, or excuse me, 4 months, over a season of over a quarter of these joints, and it's been a while since somebody else has been on this joint. So I've been working on the priorities at the moment for the past few months, and at this point, I'm reaching out to brethren one-on-one. I've sent out like general notices, things like that, but of like participating, welcoming. But at this point, what I'm doing is I'm reaching out to specific brethren to do like a specific call. So not necessarily in this joint, but to have it available and sharing it on the Cafe Melange website, talking about a number of topics. There's a list of people that I'm reaching out towards, and seeing out who else might want to participate in those calls, and then scheduling those accordingly, recording those accordingly, and then sharing those accordingly. And then from that, going further to approach ethical companies, saying this is some of the work that we're doing, and this is some of the content that we want, that we're building. Support it. So invest in it, benefit from it, because you already do, but we can do better. So that's some of the stuff that I'm working on at the moment. I'm actually, I didn't write any notes for this journey, but I'm just looking at what my actual to-do notes are. So I think about letters of introductions. All right, so I mentioned before Singapore, and Singapore has a thing called the Singapore Cooperative Program, where it gives consultation to small nations, island nations, specifically about different topics, from like infrastructure development to technology, techniques, and this, that, and the other. So as a diaspora and a forming organizational diaspora, it may Melange, the Melange diaspora may be still outside the scope of the parameters for this Singapore Cooperation Program. However, if it is cool, if it is within the parameters and we qualify and we can do it amidst our modest institutional infrastructure, cool. If not, fine, that's fine too. Guess what? Still, we want consultation. Still, we want diplomatic rapprochement. And so the consideration is that at that point, working directly with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at Singapore, rather than say through the auspices of the Singapore Cooperation Program, which is run through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So either way, yeah, we want connects, legit, official, modest, continuing. And so we've made it communications with certain degrees of efficacy here and there with Singapore in the past years. At this point, the consideration is having a certain amount of, like, doing a traditional style, giving a letter of introduction, and doing it that way rather than just us direct. So we're approaching a number of institutions with this objective, and again, it's somewhat of a broad objective of just establishing diplomatic relationship, but that's actually it's actually specific, and that's standard. The context is just a little bit different than what exists through other nations, and through those diplomatic relations, the diplomatic rapprochement, there is increased specificity, but that's a matter of determining what it is. It's appropriate and mutually beneficial for the sides involved. So to get to that point, we are approaching a number of institutions with whom we already have established relationship, particularly me personally, through my spiritual diplomacy, and soliciting these organizations to write a letter of recommendation or a letter of introduction on our behalf to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Singapore, advocating for our mixed heritage, our Melange diaspora, and specifically the auspices of as administrated or advocated administratively by the Melange Ethos Institute. So, and again, a lot of the details of like, well, where do you have a plan? Do you have a website? Do you have contacts? Yo, that's part of the challenge. That's what we want to talk about, because things challenge here. We can, if you require standard criteria and credentials, then that undoes the reason why we're approaching. That's part of the reason. So, and part of the reason why we abstain from having it at the moment is because of the affliction in addition. So it's like saying to a refugee, oh, well, you got papers now. A refugee seeking asylum and saying, yo, got troubles, challenges. Yo, we need some like support. We need some cooperation. Well, you got papers. You got this, that, and the other. What you talking about? What I just tell you? So in terms of Melange, yo, it's affliction. And people say, oh, you look so poor and tatty. Don't trip. We're getting it from all different types of sides. Now it's beautiful, and lots of us are living comfortable, but exactly in those same experiences of comfort, there's a lot of stifling, and there's a lot of duress. So that's part of the challenge, and that's actually what the our brothers and sisters at the Association for Mixed Race Irish talk about in terms of like the government not even recognizing it, just ignoring it, and additionally. And so that's part of the challenge we experience domestically, and then when we go internationally to get beyond the domestic box, the internationally say, "Well, did you talk to your domestic provider?" So, if they were doing the job, we would need to be going beyond it. So anyways, and then that's part of the rigmarole and the runaround and everything else like that. But we continue on, we go further, and we show how we benefit people, particularly nations like Singapore that significantly rely upon pluralism, multiculturalism, diversity, and the melange experience. So it's not just a matter of Singapore helping us; we help Singapore too. And the experience, the lessons, the wisdom, the teachings that we have to share, the experience that we share, uh, they are considerable benefit to Singapore. So it's in our mutual interest to do these things. Now, I had to pause because there's somebody here. I'm gonna pause. So, we're talking about letters of introduction. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. A number of combos and like things are happening coming out the woodwork. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a challenging thing though as well, because it means it's additional responsibility. Got to come through with that. So, working on a scriptural reasoning treatise or document on the Melange experience. I have yet to do that. I have yet to do one of those, which is interesting because I've done that on a number of topics, from wealth ethos to Black nationalism additionally. So for me not to do something specifically on the experience of Melange is interesting. So anyways, I'm in the process of doing that, and putting together some materials that are presentable for organizations locally and internationally on the Melange experience, providing consultation. I won't get into too much details about the consultation because that might be somewhat distracting at the moment. Yeah, the Rojak Rasim joint, that's a little bit off topic, but it's kind of continuing ad hoc. And if that's applicable. I'll say one other thing. One of the things I'm also working on at this point is, I put together, I mentioned before, an anthology that's thousands of pages that has lots and lots of works, a collection of writings that I put through the years, from poetry and prose to like 100-page documents, stuff like that, treatises. But I've also put together like over 1,000 videos of recordings that have probably been seen by maybe as many people. Or at least as many times, probably fewer people. However, when reaching out to these other additional organizations, like I mentioned, Letters of Introduction, Singapore, Cafe Melange, and additionally, it's helpful to be able to share a lot, not to share a representation of the work that I do, that's done with Son Ashram and with Melange Ethos Institute, particularly through amidst Melange Sangha. But to give people just reference to the channel, the YouTube channels or whatever, it's like there's a whole lot of things. They have to go wading through it. So basically, long story short, I'm putting together a highlights channel that has playlists, categorical playlists, topical playlists that share the highlights of things I've shared through the past years. So that it's easier to reference and access and get an idea what we're talking about. So when we talk about Melange, Cafe Melange, and the different things like Melange shorts, short stories, animated shorts, and additionally conversations and storytelling, and additionally people have an idea of what we're talking about, rather than a quick, easier access idea of what we're talking about, rather than just like browsing through like the huge hundreds and hundreds of videos that I posted. So anyways, and that we've posted. So that's what it is. Those are some things I'm working on. And we're going to wrap this up because we're already way late and on time. And thus it goes. Share this consideration. Spiritual is, let's say, I already flummoxed it. Path is spiritual. Spouse is religion. Share that for consideration. And I think that's going to be much for the moment. I'll give a brief explanation of what that means. So path is spiritual, meaning each of us are on a path in this life, in reconciliation of whatever we understand as God and the universe, and it's an individualistic endeavor. It's like the utmost ultimate existential endeavor. That's spiritual. That's our spiritual path. That's our spiritual experience. But then people also talk about religion, and people also often talk about, I'm not too religious but spiritual. But and part of the challenge, or one of the reasons why people would make that proclamation, is because religion can be increasingly controversial, because religion deals with two things: relationship, but also commitment, and its relationship with people, and our commitment towards that thing. So it brings like that heavenly experience of the existential down to earth, and like how we actually do it in this life, and like cooperate with others in doing it. Hey, and so there's a consideration when we talk about spouse and who we marry in this life. That's the quintessential proclamation of our religion. Our spouse is our religion, and our spouse is our quintessential relationship upon which all the other relationships are contextualized: religious congregation, village, community, family. Additionally, obviously, we honor our far and our more, our ancestors, and additionally, but the marital relationship is the one, for the most part, for many of us, that we decide, that we commit to individually as adults, as grown folk in this life. And all our other relationships are formed or are colored accordingly. Haha. So, anyways, that's a consideration. Path is spiritual. Spouse is religion. That being said, namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, zaijian, adios, take care, simply na asmu, killer Fred, one love and peace.